Welcome to Gun 45. I'm Tony. If you own a firearm, or you're thinking about owning one, the information you trust can make a real difference in safety, responsibility, and staying on the right side of the law. Some common beliefs about guns sound reasonable, get repeated everywhere, and still lead people into avoidable problems: accidents, equipment failures, or legal trouble. Today I'm walking through 15 of the most persistent myths that every gun owner should understand clearly. This is not about tactics or confrontation. It is about correcting misinformation so you can make better decisions about storage, maintenance, training, and legal use. Everything here is grounded in basic mechanical facts, manufacturer guidance, and publicly available information. Always follow your local laws, get professional training, and treat every firearm with the seriousness it deserves. Let's start the countdown. Number 15. Magazines wear out if you leave them loaded. A lot of owners unload and reload their magazines regularly because they believe the spring will go dead from sitting compressed. That is not how modern magazine springs work. Springs fatigue primarily from repeated cycling, compressing and releasing over and over, not from being held in a compressed state. A quality magazine left loaded for years can still function reliably when needed. Constant unloading and reloading actually accelerates wear. The practical approach is simple. Load quality magazines, store them properly, and periodically inspect the feed lips and spring for obvious damage or dirt. Treat magazines as important components, not disposable items that need constant babysitting. Number 14. Dry firing always damages a gun. This myth mixes two different situations. Rimfire firearms, such as many .22s, can be damaged by dry firing because the firing pin is designed to strike the rim of a cartridge against the chamber edge. Without a case present, repeated dry fire can peen the chamber or damage the pin. Centerfire handguns and rifles from major manufacturers are a different story. Most modern centerfire designs are explicitly rated by their makers as safe for dry fire practice. The firing pin travels into empty space and does not contact anything harmful. Dry fire is one of the most effective, zero-cost ways to improve trigger control and build safe handling habits. If you prefer extra caution, use snap caps. The key point is to know which type of firearm you have and follow the manufacturer's guidance instead of applying rimfire rules to every gun. Number 13. Suppressors make guns silent. Movies created this idea. A suppressor, often called a silencer, reduces the sound of a gunshot, typically by 20 to 35 decibels, but it does not eliminate it. An unsuppressed rifle shot can exceed 160 decibels. Even with a suppressor, many centerfire rounds remain well above 130 decibels, still loud enough to require hearing protection in most situations. In addition, any bullet traveling faster than the speed of sound produces its own sonic crack that a suppressor cannot remove. The quietest results come from pairing a suppressor with subsonic ammunition. Used correctly and legally, suppressors are a hearing protection and noise reduction tool, not a device that turns a gunshot into a whisper. Always check and follow all federal, state, and local regulations before acquiring or using one. Number 12. An attacker can easily remove the slide from your pistol in a struggle. This image comes from movies and a few carefully staged demonstrations on specific older designs that have exposed takedown levers. In real dynamic situations, the idea does not hold up. A modern semi-automatic pistol is not designed to be field stripped under force while someone is fighting for control of it. The more realistic mechanical risks during a close-range struggle are simpler: the magazine release being depressed so the magazine drops, or the slide being pushed slightly out of battery, so the firearm cannot fire until it returns to battery. Awareness of those basic failure points is useful. The cinematic slide comes off in your hand scenario is not a practical concern for most modern pistols. Number 11. Higher price automatically means higher reliability. Price often buys better fit and finish, smoother triggers, tighter tolerances, nicer materials, and improved aesthetics. Reliability, however, is driven more by design, magazine quality, ammunition consistency, and maintenance than by the price tag alone. Many mid-price service pistols have documented histories of high round counts with minimal mechanical failures. Extremely tight match-grade tolerances can sometimes reduce reliability when dirt, debris, or lower-quality ammunition is introduced. The practical takeaway is to evaluate a firearm based on proven design, available testing data, and how well it runs with the ammunition and maintenance schedule you will actually use, not solely on cost. Number 10. Racking a shotgun will reliably scare an intruder away. The distinctive sound of a pump-action shotgun being cycled is dramatic in movies. In real life, relying on that sound as a plan has clear drawbacks. First, it often means the firearm was stored with an empty chamber, adding an extra step when time and clarity matter. Second, the sound announces your location and readiness. Third, not every person intent on committing a crime will respond the way a script expects. Visible presence of a firearm, combined with a clear verbal warning when safe and legal to give one, has historically ended many situations without shots being fired. The mechanical sound itself is not a reliable strategy. Proper storage, legal readiness, and training matter far more than theatrical effects. Number 9. Revolvers never jam. Revolvers earn respect for mechanical simplicity. They have no magazine to seat incorrectly, are largely unaffected by limp wristing, and can often continue functioning when pressed tightly against an object. That does not mean they are immune to stoppages. Common issues include a bullet creeping forward under recoil and binding the cylinder, primer flow that interferes with rotation, an ejector rod that loosens, or debris under the extractor star that prevents the cylinder from closing fully. When a revolver locks up, clearing it is usually more involved than a simple tap rack on a semi-automatic. Revolvers can be highly reliable tools, but treating them as infallible is inaccurate. Understanding their specific failure modes is part of responsible ownership. Number 8. A shotgun does not need to be aimed because the spread does the work. At typical indoor distances of roughly 7 to 15 feet, a standard buckshot load has not opened up into a wide pattern. The group is often only a few inches across, roughly fist-sized or smaller. Missing the intended target with the muzzle means the entire charge misses. Birdshot, sometimes chosen because it feels safer, penetrates far less in ballistic testing than the distances associated with reliable threat neutralization in law enforcement standards. Responsible defensive shotgun use requires the same deliberate aiming fundamentals used with a rifle, appropriate ammunition selection, and awareness of what lies beyond the target. Pattern testing with your own firearm and load at realistic distances is the only way to know how it actually performs. Number 7. Striker-fired pistols like the Glock have no safeties. Modern striker-fired pistols typically incorporate multiple passive safeties, a trigger safety, a firing pin block, and drop safety mechanisms. These systems are designed so the firearm will not discharge from being dropped or jarred. What they do not do is distinguish between a finger and any other object that enters the trigger guard. Accidental discharges almost always trace back to something: clothing, a holster lip, or a finger pressing the trigger. A rigid holster that fully covers the trigger guard, combined with consistent trigger finger discipline, functions as the primary user-controlled safety. Understanding how the internal safeties work and what they do not do reduces preventable accidents. Number 6. Hollow point ammunition is illegal or legally riskier than full metal jacket ammunition. In the large majority of U.S. jurisdictions, hollow point ammunition is legal for civilian ownership and use. A small number of localities place restrictions on carrying it outside the home. Always verify current local law. From a practical and legal risk standpoint, modern hollow point designs are generally preferred for defensive purposes because they are engineered to expand and reduce the chance of over-penetration compared with full metal jacket rounds that can pass through a target and continue traveling. Law enforcement agencies widely issue hollow point ammunition for the same reason. Choosing ammunition is a responsibility decision. Know the law where you live, understand terminal performance, and select loads appropriate for the intended lawful purpose. Number 5. Larger calibers such as .45 ACP are inherently more effective than 9mm. Both .45 ACP and modern 9mm defensive loads, when using quality expanding ammunition, are capable of meeting common law enforcement penetration and expansion standards. Differences in felt recoil, magazine capacity, and shootability are real and matter for many owners. Shot placement, however, remains the dominant factor in any defensive use of a firearm. Historical shifts in agency preferences, from larger cartridges back toward 9mm as bullet technology improved, reflect the recognition that controllable, accurate fire with modern expanding ammunition is more important than caliber size alone. Choose the caliber you can shoot accurately and reliably under stress, maintain it properly, and train with it. Number 4. Aiming for limbs is a safer or more legal option. Discharging a firearm at another person is treated as the use of deadly force under the law in essentially every U.S. jurisdiction, regardless of the intended point of aim. There is no separate legal category for shooting to wound. Limbs are also smaller, faster-moving targets, and major blood vessels run through them. Relying on a limb shot as a plan increases the chance of a miss, while still exposing the shooter to the full legal consequences of having used deadly force. The responsible approach is to understand the legal standard for when deadly force is justified in your jurisdiction, to avoid situations when possible, and to train for accurate center mass hits only when the legal and moral threshold has been met. Number 3. Warning shots are a safer middle ground. In most places, a warning shot is still the discharge of a firearm and can be treated as the use of deadly force or as reckless endangerment. A prosecutor may argue that the ability to fire a deliberate warning shot demonstrates the threat was not immediate. Bullets fired into the air do not disappear. They return to Earth with potentially lethal energy if they retain velocity. A small number of jurisdictions have carved out limited protections, but the general rule is that warning shots create additional legal exposure without solving the underlying problem. The safer and more defensible path is to avoid discharging a firearm unless the legal standard for its use has clearly been met. Number 2. A modern pistol with a round in the chamber is likely to go off by itself. For the large majority of modern striker-fired and hammer-fired pistols that meet current drop safety standards, an uncommanded discharge while properly holstered is extremely rare and almost always traces to an external object entering the trigger guard. Proper holster selection and consistent handling habits are the practical safeguards. One widely discussed exception involves a specific model that has been the subject of public reports, litigation, and agency decisions. Owners of any firearm should stay informed about manufacturer notices, safety upgrades, and independent testing related to their particular model. The general principle remains: modern firearms do not spontaneously fire when carried correctly. Most problems originate with user-induced trigger contact or design issues that have been publicly documented. Number 1. You will always have time to chamber a round when needed. Carrying with an empty chamber adds a required manipulation under conditions that are rarely calm or predictable. Real-world defensive incidents involving private citizens often occur at very short distances and unfold in a matter of seconds. Adding a slide rack step, especially if one hand is occupied or motor skills are degraded by stress, introduces an extra failure point. Many experienced trainers and documented student outcomes support the position that a firearm carried ready to fire, where legal, removes one variable on a high-stress day. This is not a call for recklessness. It is a recognition that time, distance, and human performance under sudden stress are limited. Training, legal awareness, and consistent carry habits matter more than theoretical extra safety steps that may not be available when they are needed. Those are the 15. Notice the pattern. Some myths mainly waste time or create unnecessary work at the range. Others can create legal exposure or reduce the reliability of the equipment you rely on. The common thread is that repetition does not equal accuracy. Responsible ownership means verifying information, following the law, seeking quality training, and treating every firearm as a serious tool rather than a prop. If any of these myths had taken root in your own thinking, you are not alone. Most of us have carried at least one incorrect idea at some point. The useful response is to replace it with better information. If this helped clarify something for you, let me know in the comments which myth surprised you most. Subscribe for more straightforward, fact-based discussion of the gear, the law, and the habits that keep owners safer and more responsible. This is Tony with Gun 45. Stay informed, stay legal, and handle every firearm with the care it requires.